With global safety, we can realize the great visions of Dwight D. Eisenhower and Martin Luther King. They knew that American leadership in an interdependent world meant ending the great scourges of our time, of continued poverty in a world of plenty, of injustice in a world of strength, of illiteracy in a world of technology, and of chronic disease in a world of miracle cures. It is these scourges that promote war, terrorism, environmental destruction, and refugee crises around the world. At the same time, our generals and admirals agree that climate change is destabilizing weak nations. Unless we act now to end these preventable crises rooted in poverty, they will inevitably drag the United States of America into further conflicts. We know now that ending these crises is no longer just a dream. Look at the successes of China and India, nations which in less than a generation have moved from chronic famine and poverty into a new measure of prosperity. I believe that it is the duty of our blessed nation to continue to do our best towards making the world safe, just, and sustainable. As our example for how to accomplish this, we will turn to the success of the Marshall Plan after World War II. America used the Marshall Plan to turn the devastated and poverty-stricken nations of Europe into our important long-term friends, trading partners, and military allies. Our economy grew fast in the 1950s in part because we invested in Europe. Now, it is again time to invest in the world through a global Marshall Plan, and our nation will again benefit strongly. Tonight, I will describe how we can afford this and why we must succeed. The success of the original Marshall Plan required the investment of only 2% of United States GDP then, and we must return to this level of generosity, knowing then and now that it will return home to benefit all Americans. Unfortunately, we are now providing only 1/10 of the investment needed. We need to give a full 2% of our GDP to fully fund the new and global Marshall Plan. Remember that a peaceful world saves America money, and a prosperous world makes money for American businesses. To American business owners, I say that if you would like 2 billion new customers, help me end poverty now. So too, the words of the prophet Isaiah again ring true, that in a world of brotherhood, we should love our brothers as ourselves. Clearly, it is in both the practical and moral interests of America to do our best to end these scourges. The blueprint of our time for the ending of poverty can be found in the Millennium Development Goals, the worldwide plan to which the United States of America proudly signed and agreed. With the new foundation of global safety I have just described, achieving the Millennium Development Goals is now possible. To provide for the fundamental needs of every human being, the eradication of extreme poverty and hunger, universal primary education for every child, women's equality so that no woman need live in fear, improving child survival and maternal health, controlling HIV, AIDS, malaria, and preventable disease, and finally, achieving global environmental sustainability. We now need to achieve these goals and then go further as we implement our global Marshall Plan. In my travels, I have found that people are smart and hardworking everywhere. Americans have always supported those ready to work hard to make a better life for their families. This is at the heart of the American dream. To achieve the Millennium Development Goals, we must help the hard-working people in poor nations to provide for themselves, to create their own personal dreams of success. To do this, each country must be the author of its own plan to end poverty. We will build on the newly successful programs that show how good development works. We will work with the United Nations Millennium Project to create a sensible, coordinated, and global program of country-specific poverty reduction plans for every highly indebted poor country. We and the other developed nations will help each poor nation not only to end poverty, but also to develop their economic infrastructure so that they can be full players in the global economy. To accomplish this, the first element of our poverty reduction support will restore mercy on earth by invoking the biblical Jubilee year through the forgiveness of international debt obligations for highly indebted poor countries by the U.S. and other rich nations. Second, we and other rich nations will support each highly indebted poor country to protect its great wild forests and mountains as connected mega-corridors of ecological wonder. These are the last wild places on Earth, and they will be permanently protected as World Heritage Sites to be managed by the United Nations Global Environment Facility. Third, for developing nations, the United States of America will make available private patents in the areas of life-saving medicines, renewable energy, sustainably grown food, water, and communications, using fair and just compensation to patent holders so that these nations can quickly reach self-sufficiency. Fourth, with other nations, we will help expand the Climate Refugee Resettlement Fund so that families displaced by climate change can quickly find new homes. I have directed the Secretary of State to prepare for these efforts, and my administration has already begun preparing legislation for Congress to increase our national contribution to the Global Marshall Plan to a full 2% of our GDP. For our safety, our prosperity, and because it is the just and moral thing to do, it makes good sense now that we implement these poverty reduction measures.